Good evening. It now being 5:04 on Wednesday, April 10th of 2024. We're beginning this meeting of the Committee of Ordinance and Rules. I would ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that everyone remain standing. At the outset of these meetings, we always have a moment of silence for those who are serving our country here and abroad, but specifically tonight I wanted to call for a moment of silence for an individual that has covered many of these meetings. For anyone who's attended them, Fred Hansen was a reporter with the Patriot Ledger longer than I've actually been living. Normally he would be walking in a few minutes late and setting up at that desk. Monday night he was covering a school committee meeting and he passed away. I think he has added so much to the South Shore as a whole and to our town. He was a gentleman, a voracious reader who would always be able to describe his latest readings. He was a gentleman. He always asked me after any meeting before he got to asking for quotes about the meeting, how my kids were, how my family was. He reached out to me specifically when I lost my dad. He was a reporter of the old era. It was not about how many clicks he could get on his story. There was no personal leanings in the way he wrote. It wasn't a conservative push or a liberal push. It was always him getting the facts and reporting them right down the middle from that sort of forgotten era of that quality newsman. He has brought in so much to our town, and he will be missed. Before we hold that moment of silence, I didn't know if any of the other counselors wanted to say anything. Seeing none, I would ask that moment of silence. Thank you very much. Clerk Semino, can we have a roll call to begin the meeting?
Councillor Ingus?
Here.
Councillor Hume is presently not here. Councillor Flaherty? Here. Councillor Morin?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Semino. There are no minutes to approve tonight, so moving directly into new business, which is 24009, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston petition for zoning map amendment 338 Elm Street, map 2071, plot 5, and 0 Elm Street, aka 7 Hawthorne Road, map 2065/34, taking up any action relative thereto. This was just so we can have a little bit of procedural history on this. This was a proposition for the rezoning of a particular area of land that is commonly known as St. Thomas More, the parking lot and woodlands and old school that sort of currently resides behind it. There has been a planning board recommendation for favorable action. It now sits before the Committee on Ordinance and Rules, who will ultimately make some sort of decision, whether that be a favorable recommendation or a disfavorable recommendation, to the full town council, and the full town council will at some point vote on this. We did at our last meeting of Ordinance and Rules have a public comment period after the petitioner spoke. We did have residents speak. We have received many emails both for and against this proposal, and we continue to do so, and I would encourage folks to continue to submit their comments to us. When this ultimately gets to the full council, there will be a public hearing. So once again, I know folks were able to speak at the planning board. They're able to speak before us at our last meeting. There will be an opportunity again for folks to speak at the full council hearing. So with that said, I would first turn tonight to Attorney Modestino and developer George Clements. I know there was a number of questions and items raised at our last meeting, and I didn't know if there's any sort of further presentation from you folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. Michael Modestino representing George Clements. We had the meeting a couple weeks ago. A lot of questions arose at that time. Some questions have come in since then. We're here to answer any questions that the members may have or the public may have. I want to emphasize a couple of things at the outset. One thing it's been asked of us, or asked of my client, is he committed to this plan to build over 55 housing if the zoning change is granted. And I've discussed it with him, and he'll come up here and talk as well. He wants to do this project. This is the project that he wants to do. He doesn't want to put in 87 apartments or anything of that nature. He wants to build over 55 housing. He's thought it out carefully, and he thinks it's the best plan for this particular property. We know the residents have concerns. They have, valid concerns. There's no questions about it, and they should be listened to. And I know the committee is listening to them. But I think that all these concerns can be dealt with adequately, and I think it's in Braintree's best interest to have an over 55 housing project. There's no land really available for this type of setting anywhere else, so I think it would be good if this could go forward and be grabbed on at this point. The other thing that's come up too, there was a question about affordable housing and inclusionary housing, and we've explored that with Ms. Semino, and it's clear to me that there was never a vote taken on it, that it's been passed on over the past 2 years or so. And we really needed to clear that up because it makes a big difference to my client whether or not he has to have affordable housing. It would be difficult to do the project without knowing whether he needs to do that. And having said that, it's not that my client is against affordable housing at all. He just believes that it's very difficult to combine over 55 housing that obviously is going to be somewhat up there in the cost with affordable housing in the same project. So over the past couple of weeks, my client has thought about another area, and that area is trying to keep the church. And he's looked into this, he's looked into with his construction supervisor, and he wants to follow up on it. He wants to see if that can be done. And the purpose of that would be to keep the church. There's enough people that have spoken at the meeting and elsewhere that are concerned about the church. It's very important to them, and they want to keep the church. So he is going to explore, to the best of his ability, to try to keep the church and possibly use the church for housing. Now, that housing, he's looked at it with the construction manager. He could possibly build as many as 11 units in the church area without it disrupting the church walls and the structure. And he would be amenable to having some of those units affordable. And I think that would be in the town's best interest. I think it would be in the public's best interest. And he can answer any questions you may have about that. It's at the infant stages of looking at this. He has to do some more work to make sure that it can be done, but he thinks it can be done, and he wants it to be done. And I think that would solve some of the problems that we have with this project. So I really have nothing other to say. Mr. Clements can say anything that he'd like.
Mr. Clements?
Thank you. Thank you for having us this evening. I just want to reiterate Mike's comments. I think it's, this has been our design development program since the inception of this. There were a lot of questions relative to our level of commitment to the 55 plus as well as the density. So I definitely understand people get nervous when they don't understand exactly what the proposal is. But as I stand here before you this evening, this is our intended development period. We're not looking to get a zoning change, come in, do a higher density. There were some unanswered questions that we've worked through. So we're very confident that we can implement this project, and that's our intention. And I think it's also a worthwhile venture to look at perhaps preserving the church and, maybe incorporating some affordable housing in conjunction with the town. So I think we can capture a lot of goals here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Mrs. Hume?
What did I miss? Sorry for being late.
No, it's not necessary. We basically went through the procedural history of where
Okay.
where it held. We talked a little bit about continuing to send in emails and comments from the public, because this at some point will go to the full council for further public hearing. And then Mr. Attorney Modestino and Mr. Clements have just gotten up and spoken.
Okay. So are you looking for comments from us or just the public
From
now?
you folks.
Okay. Okay, I will. Sorry, my day job kept me late. and I apologize for being late, but just a couple of comments from previous meetings and from Mr. Clemens and Mr. Modestino. So I know the church has a lot of history. I've raised my family in the neighborhood. My kids were all baptized there, made their first communion there. So it is a big part of the neighborhood. Mr. Clemens' proposal does fit the need for 55-plus housing, which there's not many options for people who are looking to sell their home and stay within Braintree. And in my opinion, that's one of the reasons why our enrollment in the schools are going down, because the elderly are not moving out of their homes because they can't afford to go anywhere. There's not an option in Braintree, so they're staying. This would improve the property, in my opinion. Mr. Clemens is also a Braintree resident, raised his family here, and he's a developer. Developers are going to make money. Nobody's going to sit here and come before us and say they're not going to make money. But over the past several years, like, developers don't want to do business in Braintree. There's a local bank telling developers, don't come to Braintree, they're not open for business, because we make it so difficult for them to come and improve. You're hearing from the school committee and from the town, we're in like revenue shortfalls, and it's because we haven't had new growth, and because developers aren't coming in and being able to build their projects and do development. Now, we've had developers in the past who were not good developers for Braintree. As I said, Mr. Clemens lives here. I've seen his proposal. I've talked to him about it. I trust what you're going to do, and Attorney Modestino as well. I know residents care about Braintree, and I've been involved in town government for over 16 years, and one thing I also know, people do not like change. It's not easy. They're opposed to it. They don't like it. They want to be heard, and I have listened to everybody. But what I've also seen over the years is when change does happen, and then people get used to it, then they realize, well, this is actually a good thing. The May Center's been vacant forever at this property. There's a whole slew of reasons. Like, I do support the project. I will be voting in support of it. I think this is a good thing for Braintree because we have a developer who lives here, because if Mr. Clemens isn't true to his word, he can't hide. He's right in our own backyard. And as all of you said, like, I know he's been open and honest. He's listened to us as counselors. I know he's met with residents and whatnot. So I do think this is a good thing for Braintree, and it addresses many needs, not just money for the town, but for housing, and it'll be a huge improvement to that site. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So the document that I look to the most closely for guidance on questions of zoning and development is the newly updated Braintree Master Plan. I was a member of that committee. It was a long process. There was an enormous amount of community involvement, and development was one of the, certainly not the only important component of that process, but it was something that was a considerable focus of it. And what came through that process, what came out was that there's a substantial wish in Braintree for the preservation of open space. There is a wish to create a greater amount of housing diversity with a specific emphasis on 55-plus housing. There's a wish to increase walkability in our community. And all of those things are answered by Mr. Clemens' proposed project. But it also includes a specific wish not to overdevelop our community with multifamily housing. So these two influences are often in tension with one another. What I like about this proposal is that I think that it promises to be a good balance between these many concerns, and that's not easy to find. As Councillor Hume has indicated, it is true that this community must develop. We have to have revenue. And I think this is a solid project for us to consider. And everybody, every community has to move forward with a certain amount of good faith in all of its actors, all of its elected officials, whether it's on the planning board or this body or the mayor's office, and all of the people who want to invest in our community too. We can't operate on the assumption that they're looking to destroy us, because that's false. So I'm going to support this. I'm going to support this motion tonight. Thank you.
Council Moran?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've listened to the concerns of the individuals and the neighbors that came up, both for and against this proposal. I think that, you know, what concerns me about this project is the risk, and I've been looking for ways to mitigate the risk that putting the property in Residence C, and changing the zoning and putting the property in Residence C would create. Yeah, there's no denying that once this zoning is changed, the options for development change with it. I really, I have expressed my disappointment with the manner in which the Archdiocese has interacted with the community and the neighborhood. I don't blame Mr. Clements for this, but I think that given the fact that we're dealing with an institution that was largely built on the backs and the hearts and the efforts and the prayers of the people that live in this neighborhood, that more consideration should have been given to them in the disposal of that property. And I think that if the Archdiocese had listened, they could have put out a request for proposals that was tailored towards the wishes of the neighbors, and they didn't. And they're not even, though their name is on the petition, they're not even here. They haven't been here. And I am trying not to hold Mr. Clements responsible for that. But in listening to the neighbors' primary concerns is they don't want an apartment building or a dense use that would change the character of the neighborhood. And they don't want to lose a buffer between the current building and the neighboring homes, the green space that currently exists. So our options are basically, if we reject the proposed zoning change, the best result would be 21 to 26 single-family homes that we have been told would disrupt the vegetative barrier that currently exists and not enhance the neighborhood, not meet some of the identified needs that other members have articulated. However, even if we don't change the zoning law and we reject the change to residency, the Dover Amendment could result in assisted living, daycare, some exempt use that could be just as dense in impact as changing to residency. So if we pass this, the best result that we get is this development, which I think would roughly have the same number of beds as if the single-family homes were built. The worst-case scenario would be an apartment building and a denser use. You know, Mr. Clements has been adamant that he is not seeking to use that option with the zoning change. I will vote in favor of the zoning change, but I will look for a role that the town can play to monitor and ensure that this is the use to which the property will be put. I don't know if it's through community preservation or some other way. I do want to make sure that if we're giving this property to Residence C, I want to make sure that it's for this purpose and for this type of plan, and I will work to make sure that it is this townhome proposal, that is enacted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Moran. I want to thank my fellow committee members for their thoughts, their remarks. I want to thank Attorney Modestino, Mr. Clements, for going through this process. I know it has been long and arduous at times, and I appreciate the efforts that have been put in and the efforts that you've made to answer any and all questions that have been posed by residents. I want to thank the residents for being involved. Obviously, this proposed change has created a lot of passion from the neighbors, both for and against it. I think as Council Moran articulated, there has been this need expressed by some neighbors to maintain that sort of wall of vegetation, that open space, if you will, and didn't want to see the homes built if that might disrupt that and create these sort of paper street outlets. There has also been those who have responded against the change to this sort of proposed sort of townhouse residency type thinking it might change the character of the neighborhood, that it could increase traffic and everything that goes along with that. And I know there's also a segment of the population that is passionate about the loss of this community building in St. Thomas More that has meant so much to so many over the years. I grew up in the town. St. Thomas More was not my home parish, but obviously I had friends in that neighborhood, so St. Thomas More has been this sort of large piece of Braintree history. It's something you picture when you're driving up into East Braintree. And I know I have been a member of St. Francis for a number of years, and the idea of St. Francis not being there, it would be a shock to my system as well. So I appreciate the passion that folks have about protecting their neighborhood and protecting that building in general. Obviously, the Roman Catholic Church, after COVID and for a number of other reasons, has decided not to continue that use as a house of worship, and the Archdiocese has moved forward with selling that piece of property. I agree with Council Moran that there should have been more interaction on the part of the Archdiocese with residents. But again, that's not something that I would hold against Mr. Clements in his proposal. In looking to what the town needs, again, similar to what Councillor Hume has indicated, and Councillor Flaherty in looking at the master plan, the identified types of housing that we keep talking about is, as a whole, Braintree many residents don't want to see those large-scale apartment buildings, but we have continually identified over 55 housing and veterans housing as the two types of housing that we need to see increased. And by increasing over 55 housing, hopefully we create sort of a spiral where folks move from their sort of established single-family residences into townhome-type communities, allowing young families to upgrade and allowing new families or people starting their families or their careers to purchase those initial starter homes. So I think it is a cycle that we need to see. From looking at the perspective of the single-family home option, losing the vegetation, versus the townhome option, which again, I do think from the calculations I did could theoretically be about the same number of cars coming in and out of the neighborhood. If we're looking at 4 to 5 bedroom homes, there could be multiple cars with each. So I don't necessarily see the traffic as being all that much different. Plus, without the zoning change, there are other allowed options there that could do just as much to increase traffic in that intersection. So based on all of this analysis, based on the number of emails, both for and against, I received, I do think that this townhome option is a better option for our town. We are preserving open green space. We are addressing a need with 55 plus housing. I do obviously share the concern that once you change zoning, and that has been something that has affected my decisions in the past on certain projects, is that once that zoning is changed, there is that risk that it opens up to other things. But I am going to put my trust in Attorney Monastino in his statements and Mr. Clements in his statements that this is what we will be looking at. So ultimately, I will be in favor of this proposal tonight. Is there any further discussions from committee members? Seeing none, we do have language for a motion that has come from our legal department. So I will actually read the language and ask if anyone would so move that. So under Order 24009, the town vote to rezone 2 parcels of land identified as 338 Elm Street and as shown on Assessor's Map 2071 Plot 5 and 0 Elm Street, also known as 7 Hawthorne Road, and as shown on Assessor's Map 2065, Plot 34, from the Residence B zoning district to the Residence C zoning district. Do I have a motion as such?
Motion to move for favorable recommendation to the full council.
I have a motion by Councilor Hume. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Councilor Flaherty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Clements. Thank you, Attorney Montestino, and thank you to the residents.
Thank you. We look forward to moving this process forward, and I think we'll all be proud of the development.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And my client would certainly welcome any monitoring, as Councilor Moran had indicated, might be in order for the town to make sure that the project goes forward as planned.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Attorney
you.
Montestino. And for those in attendance, for those who continue to wish to express their opinion, because this is just a favorable recommendation from the Ordinance and Rules Subcommittee, Clerk Smino, this will be on the April 30th agenda? This will be on the April 30th agenda of the full town council meeting, and that will be a full public hearing. It will go to the 9 councilors to deliberate on, and there will be, again, public hearing that night, so there will be a public comment period for folks to express their opinions either for or against this change in zoning. So I thank you, and I hope that some of you will be there that night as well. Moving on to old business 0042.
No, you're good. I just want to know if you want to keep this recording. Or if we have-
They can kill it if they want to. For old business, moving on to 00424, council president, town council reviews are taking up any action relative thereto. Is there a motion to take off the table item 00424?
So moved.
A motion from Councilor Hume. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilor Flaherty. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Under Rule 61 of the current town council rules, we are to review and adopt council rules within 90 days, so we're actually pushing up on the end of that after the first council meeting in every even year. We did have a previous meeting about this where various changes were proposed. That was held downstairs. I would open it up to any...
Apologize. Can you just adjourn that part of the meeting for BCAM?
Oh, sure. I'm going to take a quick pause. I'm going to ask for BCAM purposes. I know a lot of folks at home wanted to watch that particular part of the meeting. BCAM is going to end this section of the meeting and not stick on for the town council rules. I understand it's not as exciting. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this part of the meeting so that BCAM can wrap up, and then we'll reopen for this old business. So with that said, could I have a motion to adjourn the Town Council Ordinance and Rules Committee as to the new business to...
Point of order, wouldn't it just be appropriate to just recess?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Motion to recess.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.